All right, I am here with Buddy Petty, my grandfather. He is a retired brigadier general from the United States Army. He is my grandfather, and we're just going to kind of talk about life, but talk about like his career in the military and everything. So, Pawpaw, thanks for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Glad to be here, Drew.
Go ahead and just introduce yourself and talk about yourself for a little bit.
Well, my name is George Wiley Petty Jr. Most people call me Buddy. I've been called Buddy all my life. I'm 75 years old, and I'm in decent health for a guy 75 years old. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed with a really good life and a good family, and there's two or three things in my life that are stand out as important things, and that's, of course, one is our religion and our family and our careers. You know, I've been blessed with goodness on all three, and I've enjoyed my life. It's been up and down, like most lives are, but progress has generally been made all along. And I find myself in the waning days of life, although I probably lived 110, who knows. But, 75 is a whole lot different than 55 or 45.
Yeah.
So you look at life a little bit different. As my friend Fergie Hunter says, we got a whole lot more days behind us than we got in front of us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you started your days off pretty humbly, though, from what I've been told, by other family members. You have built a life for yourself. You've built a life for your family, and you've worked hard every single day for it. But you and your brothers and sisters, you didn't have, I guess, you could say, as privileged of a life as your grandchildren probably have. But that's okay, though, because you were able to learn a lot from it. Correct me if I'm wrong. My mom told me that you had to wash a pair of jeans every day after high school to to take care of what you had, essentially.
Well, I only had one pair.
You only had one pair.
I was a little bit picky, so that was back when we had metal hangers.
Mm-hmm.
And when you washed your jeans, you could put those metal hangers in the jeans and hang them up above the stove, the heating stove. It was probably a oil heating stove, maybe been a gas, probably an oil heating stove. And you could hang them up above the stove at night, and in the morning you could come out with a fresh, brand new pair of blue jeans with a crease in them, which was important back then. And I only had one pair, so I'd wash them and get them ready for school the next day.
Yeah.
Which was, those things that you do, a lot of people would think that's bad or that's too hard a life, but it's really not. I mean, it teaches you a lot. It teaches responsibility.
Does that seem far and distant from the life that you have now, or does it feel like it was just yesterday?
Well, it seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
It seemed like a long time. That's when I was 14, 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
I think life teaches you stuff as you go through it.
Yeah.
Some people get more out of it than others do. Some people don't seem to be able to pick up life lessons, but they're there for everybody.
Yeah.
Now, some of us live better lives than others, and you don't have an opportunity to wash dishes after supper, or do your share of the laundry, or take out the trash. That's your responsibility, or mow the yard.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to get any money, you're going to have to work for it.
Yeah.
Because your parents don't have enough money to give you, so you go out and you mow yards and wash cars and
Yeah.
pick up a job at a service station and work for farmers,
Hmm.
you know, cutting tobacco, hauling hay.
What part of your life do you feel like you learned the most life lessons at?
Um, well, in later life, I was involved in agriculture and still am to that fact, as you know. Still
Yeah.
doing some consulting work, but uh, the military taught me a lot. I learned a lot from the military, and I learned a lot from ag people. Ag people are pretty basic. They don't do anything unless it's necessary, and they don't spend money unless it's going to make them a profit.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in life have a hard time understanding uh, about money and profit, and they just think that, well, I'll spend this $2 or this $200 or this 2,000, whatever it might be, because I really do want this item.
Yeah.
But farmers are not like that.
Yeah.
Now, they'll spend money when it's necessary if they can make a profit on it.
Yeah.
If they can't make a profit on it, then it doesn't get spent.
Hmm.
And the military taught me about essentials. You know, what is absolutely necessary? What is required? You know, you can think about things and maybe you'd like to have them, you'd like to do them, but the military never has had a lot of money. They're
Mhm.
always short of money, never have had enough funds available, never will, but they spend money and then they do things that has value. So
Mhm.
if you watch them closely, there's a lot of tightwads in the military.
Yeah.
They're just austere type people. They don't spend, even in their private life.
Yeah.
They wear short shirts more than one day.
Yeah.
They take care of their boots, their shoes. They
Yeah.
polish them, and they resole them, and they buy new shoestrings and
Mhm.
wear the same pair of shoes for a long time.
Yeah.
Only because they're, I call them austere. Other people call them cheap.
Hmm.
But I learned a lot from the agriculture world, and I learned a lot from the military.
Yeah.
College was a good experience, only because it taught me to persevere and stick with things. It took me about 7 years to graduate, although I never flunked a class.
Yeah.
I dropped out and would get money and go back to school. And that took about 7 years. Sometimes I'd work a semester, sometimes I'd work a whole year before I went back to school.
Yeah.
And I was very, very proud of myself because I graduated from college.
Yeah.
It took a while for me to do that. So one of those things that you learn in life, called stick to something, and if you really do want it, you'll get it.
Yeah.
And if you don't want it, you won't get it probably.
Yeah.
You got to have some stick to itness to handle those down days.
Yeah.
You know,
Would you say that was probably the most radically changing time of your life was your college years? Because that's when you met, BB, my
Yeah.
grandmother.
Yeah.
That's when you got drafted in the military, right?
well, I didn't get drafted. I knew I was going to get drafted, and I went into the National Guard there in Paducah, and I was there for about a year and a half, and they wanted to send me off for 6 months training, and that was going to interrupt my college. So I joined the senior ROTC and was able to avoid the actual military, even though I was in ROTC,
Mm-hmm.
until I graduated from college.
Okay.
But your question about that being some of the most difficult times, actually, I've written it down a lot of times. From about the time that I graduated from high school, when I had a plan, high school was formatted, there's certain things you did, and then all of a sudden you graduated, you didn't have high school anymore, and you kind of had to scratch around to stay in college. I really did wander a lot.
Yeah.
Wandered. I was lost. Everybody else was going to college. Not everybody, but all my friends were. And I wanted to, but I either didn't have the money or I didn't have the money to do it the way I wanted it to do.
Right.
So it just took me a while, and it was very frustrating. And I'm 23, 24 years old and not graduated, and friends that I graduated from high school, they've already graduated, and now they're making big money, and here I am out here still
Mm-hmm.
trying to get a degree. But it did, again, one of those things that I stuck to it.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to get hooked up with the military and ROTC, senior ROTC,
Yeah.
my junior and senior years. And I got into something that I liked. I mean, from the day I was there, I knew I liked it.
Yeah.
And as my military career continued, I got better at it. And when you get better at it, people notice you.
Yeah.
And so I got good early promotions. I got recognized for jobs, good jobs that I was doing.
Yeah.
And it jerked me out of that zone I was in back probably from about 19 to 23, 24.
Like a funk,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah, just like a, did you say flunk?
Funk, like just I don't know, gunk or funk or whatever.
A zone?
Yeah, like
Yeah. I mean, I was in a zombie world. I was just going through the motions. I wasn't very productive. I know that, but I was working.
Yeah.
And I was saving money, and I'd always come back to school. And finally, I got graduated there. So that was really a tough time. I remember it very difficult because I was always feeling sorry for myself too.
Yeah.
Because everybody else seemed to have it made, and I didn't. So.
Yeah.
But that's not life, you know that. There's a lot of times when you think you're not doing so well, and you find out you're doing quite well compared to other people. So.
Yeah. How did you feel about the military when you first began your career with them versus how you felt when you retired?
Of course, we was in senior ROTC, and we drilled on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that was basically all we did. We went to class, and we did take some field trips. But the first time I really got to get my hands dirty, so to speak, was at summer camp at Indiantown Gap Military Reservation, and I did a good job there, Drew. I mean, I was recognized as I was the #1 cadet in our battalion.
Yeah.
And that's probably, I don't know, probably 300 or 400 guys, So I got a recognition from my professor of military science. He was an 06 full colonel. And I got a silver platter, which I've still got today.
Nice.
And Betsy was there along with Mr. and Ms. Sprunger. So they brought her up for graduation, and I received that. And I realized that, I had something going here.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked it. And
Yeah.
then, of course, I went on active duty shortly thereafter and thought I was going to be an infantry platoon leader.
Yeah.
Because I went to infantry officer basic at Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yeah.
But I had gone to flight school in college, and I
Mhm.
was what they call flight obligated. And again, it's just one of those things, and I see it a lot in Chris, my son. He's really good at machinery,
Yeah.
and he can touch and feel and look and hear.
So is Max too.
And Max
His-
is outstanding. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable what Max can do.
Yeah.
But when I started flying helicopters, I knew immediately that I was going to be good at it.
Yeah.
I just do it. And I was the first to fly solo in my class.
Nice.
Very
Nice.
first.
Nice.
I'll never will forget it. The guy, really nice instructor. I had like 12 or 15 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd been testing me. I could tell he was running me through the ringer. So the morning that I soloed, he got jumped in and hooked up his helmet. We started talking through the radios, and he said, "Pull me up, fly up to the tower. I got to go up there just a second." So I picked up the helicopter. This was a TH-55. It's a Hughes helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
We used to call it the Mattel Messerschmitt. It was a little small helicopter, but
Yeah.
it functioned as you learned how to fly a helicopter.
Right.
So I picked it up and took it over to the tower and parked it. My engine was still running. He got out and unhooked his helmet and walked 2 steps toward the tower, and then he stopped, turned back around, came, opened the door, pulled the cord out, plugged his mic up again, and looked up at me and said, "Take her around a spin a couple of times, solo." And I sort of grinned at him, and he said, "Yeah, right now." And he pulled it out and walked away. So there I was. I either had to solo or kind of default and embarrass myself. So
Right.
I was the first one to solo in that class.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that led on to you flying Huey helicopters in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were part of the 101st.
Yep. I was the Alpha Company of the 101st Aviation Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
We were called the Comancheros, and it's a masculine kind of a thing that happens when men get together. They bond, and there weren't any women, of course. You know, it was all a bunch of guys and young guys, and we had young warrant officers. By then, I was probably 26 years old. I graduated from college at 25. As I said, it took me 7 years to graduate.
Right.
Keep
right.
in mind that I'm 25, 26 years old here. 26 probably.
Yeah.
And we had warrant officers that were 19. A
Oh.
warrant officer is a guy that didn't go to college and didn't go to officer basic or anything. He went to what they call warrant officer candidate school.
Yeah.
And they were just young guys like driving a hot rod.
Yeah.
That's what they remind you of. They flew fast. They were reckless.
Yeah.
But they were really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do a lot of things with a helicopter that most people wouldn't even try. You know. But
Right.
They were invincible. They didn't think like they'd ever die. But so I flew for the 101st, and I started out as a platoon leader, and then I became a operations officer after a while, and then I was liaison with the 2nd Infantry Brigade as a captain. I got promoted to captain while I was there,
Mm-hmm.
and I had an interesting job. I worked in the Tactical Operations Center. They call it the TOC, and it's an organization that runs 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And you have a master sergeant
Mm-hmm.
that runs 12-hour shifts, and that guy is in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's got a major that's over him, but the major's not necessarily there. But you got people who support that requirement, and
Yeah.
I was the air liaison
Mm-hmm.
from the aviation battalion.
Mm-hmm.
And when they wanted to take a lift into an LZ, you know, they would say, "Okay, we're going to go to such and such a location, and we got 22 helicopters, and we're going to take so many packs, and blah blah blah." I said, "That's okay, but you know, you got 57 millimeter weapons over here, and you got to fly around that." And, you know, I would advise them as best I could on what to do and what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really interesting job because there's always something going on. See,
Yeah.
you reported to, this was the brigade.
Mm-hmm.
A brigade is commanded by an 06, a full colonel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an infantry guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a S4, an S3 guy in operations who was a major.
Mhm.
I was a captain. I reported directly to him. He was in charge of the Tactical Operations Center.
Okay.
But he had a guy that was there every day. It was a master sergeant.
Okay.
Very interesting job. Loved it. Didn't get to fly very much.
Yeah.
And you know, I liked to fly. I really did.
Mhm.
You know, you in the Army, when you're in Vietnam, shoot, I'd fly 12, 15 hours a day sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, log 12, 15 hours
Yeah.
a day. You might be gone 20 or 22, you know.
Yeah.
Might be gone 15 hours and fly 10 hours, you know. Because sometimes there's a lot of downtime. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have to go somewhere and sit and wait for somebody or
Right.
something to happen. So,
How long was your career in flying helicopters?
well, when I came home from Vietnam in November or December, I flew a little bit at Fort Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
but by then I was probably uh, I was probably 27, probably going on 28,
Mm-hmm.
and of course I had a child. Michelle was born, and let me think. Chris came along in '72, so
Mm-hmm.
pretty soon thereafter I had two children, and flying probably wasn't the safest thing to do, and
Yeah.
I didn't really I decided that I probably needed to stay out of it, so I maintained my flight status,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to fly, I think it was 30 hours a month, something like that, maybe not, I can't remember what it was required, but I did maintain my flight status while I was at Fort Campbell, but I was a company commander there,
Yeah.
and it was company commander is a big time job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you're you're the CEO. But you're got about 300 people,
Mm-hmm.
and they all got jobs, and they all got going different places and all kind of issues. You're always getting calls at 2 o'clock in the morning. Some private E3 is in jail in Clarksville, Tennessee, or Nashville, Tennessee. And
Yeah.
you gotta take care of stuff like that.
What did you have to deal with that often?
Oh yeah, that happened all the time. You know. And then you got all kind of emergencies. People, their parents get sick, they want to go home. You got to contact the Red Cross and
Yeah.
make arrangements for that. You know, the people run out of money. They need short-term loans. You know,
Mhm.
they're people requirements. It was
Right.
a community, but it was an organization, and I was the head of it. So it was an interesting job. Now that was the first time I was a commander. I later was a commander as a lieutenant colonel, and then I was a commander 3 times as an '06 full colonel.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was a commander of the 321st MID in Memphis, Tennessee, Military Intelligence Detachment. And I got into that after I got off of active duty. And I was down there for probably 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to the ARCOM, and I was the what they call Deputy Chief, DST, Deputy Chief of Staff for Training.
Mm-hmm.
I was in charge of all training for the ARCOM, which at that time was probably 4,000 people scattered in about 5 states.
Yeah.
So good job, high level, lots of visibility.
Yeah.
Don't screw up or you're gone kind of a job, you know. And again, I managed to, you know, I managed to succeed at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I took the job, I said, what are you going to do here? And I said, the first thing you need to do is learn what this job's all about.
Yeah.
So I immersed myself in the job.
Yeah.
Every weekend I was gone.
Yeah.
You know. But if you're going to succeed at stuff, you have to spend time at it. That's
Right.
that's one of the things I've learned in life. You're not going to get to be successful by wishing or hoping.
Right.
You got to do it.
Right.
I mean, if somebody can tell me different, I want to hear about it. But I immersed myself in that job.
Yeah.
And it taught me a lesson that people will put up with a guy. Listen, I didn't fool anybody, Drew. A lot of people knew I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I didn't act stupid, and I asked questions.
Yeah.
I'd ask a senior sergeant or a guy that was experienced. I said, so what's going on here? And what am I supposed to learn? How am I supposed to be able to manage stuff like this? They'll be glad to talk to you. They'll be glad to tell you about it if you'll ask.
Yeah.
If you go in there bullheaded, though, and people start talking, you start talking to them, and you start telling them what to do, and you don't know what you're doing yourself.
Yeah.
That doesn't ever get anywhere.
Yeah.
I learned that when I was an iron worker in St. Louis. In Chicago.
Yeah.
I worked for a guy up there, and he was the union steward. And he told me then, he said, "Now you don't know much about ironworking." He said, "If you'll ask questions, these guys will tell you.
Yeah.
But don't go in there and start telling them how to do their work."
Right.
And so I asked a lot of questions then. So my Army career progressed quite well there, and then of course I got picked up for general in '98 and got promoted in April of '99. There was a delay there
Mm-hmm.
because Congress has to authorize it. You have to wait till you're actually
Mm-hmm.
the Congress authorizes your promotion. So
How did life change after becoming a general?
Best job I ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Best job, period, I ever had in my life. I felt like that it was, I felt like that I was actually contributing to something that was of value.
Yeah.
And I like to do that.
What did your responsibilities look like?
I was the deputy commanding general for Combined Arms Support Command. They call it CASCOM. And CASCOM was the Army organization that trained all of the logistics skills,
Mm-hmm.
transportation, truck drivers, mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
quartermaster, clothing, food,
Mm-hmm.
ammunition. All of that is a skill that you can transfer to the civilian world.
Right.
And logisticians are in high demand, especially Army guys that have been successful at it in
Mhm.
the civilian world.
Yeah.
Chaplains, we dealt with chaplains.
Mm-hmm.
We dealt with not artillery, but ordnance.
Mm-hmm.
Ordnance people are people who repair artillery pieces, people that repair big tanks and the armament on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a mesh of a lot of people that support the fighter.
Yeah.
Now in the Army, you got the guy that actually does the fighting. See,
Mhm.
he's the warrior. So we support warriors.
Yeah.
We get them their uniform. We keep their vehicles running.
Mm-hmm.
We make sure they got ammunition. We make sure they got food.
Mm-hmm.
Medical support. Medical support was under us too.
Mm-hmm.
So I got exposed to the support part
Mm-hmm.
of the Army.
Yeah.
And it is vital.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a shooter or a warrior out
Right.
with a weapon of some sort,
Right.
but he's no good when he's out of ammunition.
Right.
He's no good when he's wounded.
Right.
He's no good when he hadn't eaten or had a drink of water in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
So all of those things are requirements that have to be met.
Yeah.
And the military is outstanding.
Mhm.
They're so dedicated, and they've got good systems,
Mm-hmm.
and they got good people.
Yeah.
Finest people in the world, as far as I was concerned. I mean, I loved them.
Yeah.
I highly respected. I very seldom ever ran across a guy in the military that I didn't respect. I may
Yeah.
not like him because he may be a little bit more hard-nosed or maybe a little softer than I was in the way he got his job done. But
Right.
I loved them because they were so special people.
Mhm.
They were patriotic, and they were very supportive of you. They'd help you.
Yeah.
You could go to them anytime with a problem,
Yeah.
and they'd be glad to help you. So being a general, though, was a thrill.
Yeah.
I mean, an absolute thrill. I just loved it, loved the job. I always tried not to be a big dog
Mhm.
because big dogs are not wanted. You
Yeah.
know, people who think they're hot snot, they don't fit in too well. So I was always a guy that came along, and I always wore my uniform, of course. You have to in the military, and they know who you are.
Yeah.
But you don't have to come in like you know everything.
Yeah.
Give people that you work with an opportunity to show that they can do it.
Yeah.
If they can't do it, then you've got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Take some time and try to get him some training. He or she get some training. I just thought it was a wonderful job. I did it for 4 years, and then I retired in April of '02.
So
Hated that.
yeah.
Didn't want to leave, but I had to.
Well, between that time, so your career as general began in 98, 99. Shortly thereafter,
Yeah.
9/11 had happened.
Yep.
What was life like for you then?
Well, Chris and I had started our business in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So in September 2001 was about a year and 9 months after we had started our business, and we were doing okay. We weren't filthy rich, but we had a good business going.
Yeah.
So on Saturday, after 9/11 occurred, and I believe 9/11 actually occurred on a Tuesday, maybe it was.
It was a Tuesday.
Okay. So I was expecting a call from my boss. My boss was Billy K. Solomon. He was a 3-star lieutenant general.
I remember General Solomon.
Yeah, you sure do. You were
Yeah.
in his office. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was expecting a call, and on Saturday morning, we were working Saturday morning there at the office, and I got a call from him, and I told him, I said, "Well, sir, I've been expecting your call." He said, "Well, buddy, you told me that if I ever needed you, all I had to do was holler." He said, "Yeehaw!"
Oh man.
I said, I kind of laughed. I said, "Well, I guess that means you want me to come." He said, "I'd like for you to be here today, but that may be asking too much." I said, "Well, I could do it, but it sure would be nice if you'd give me till tomorrow. It's about a 10-hour drive."
Yeah.
I was expecting it.
Yeah.
And he said, "Sure, that's fine." He said, "Report Monday morning." So I dropped everything Saturday,
Mhm.
got everything packed, loaded up the car, and then Sunday morning I left. And it was a strange feeling, Drew. It was a strange feeling because you knew that something had really happened bad.
Mhm.
And a lot of people had lost their lives, and the way they did it, running those airplanes into the buildings, and the one in Pennsylvania where the passengers overtook it. It was a real big terror incident that we'd never experienced anything like that. Of course, we'd had terrorists.
Right.
We're talking close to 3,000 people there at
The World
in
Trade
New York,
Center.
at the World
Yeah.
Trade Center. So it was a big deal, and I was pretty excited about it. I wanted to go. I really wanted to go. There are times in your life, I can tell you, I've been in basketball games when I never was great, but I was okay. But I never had the confidence in my basketball skills that I had in my military skills.
Yeah.
I remember baseball games and basketball games, and I was saying, "Man, I hope they don't put me in now. Good grief, this game is so close."
Yeah.
When this happened, I said, "Man, I hope they put me in."
Yeah.
I wanted to go. I mean, it was one of those things that just really enveloped me personally. I just felt like this. I'd been training all my life for this moment.
Yeah.
And it was an experience that I loved and I've
Yeah.
cherished all my life. And you and a lot of people came up, our family member,
Yeah.
brought you up for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We had a good. I tried to expose all of my family to everything that I do.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember meeting Joe Beachley and
Yeah.
all those guys and how all that stuff operated. That was really cool.
Let's see. You were born in 70.
I was born in 94. Mom was born in 74.
Yeah. Okay, you were 7. You were 7 years old. So you'd probably remember more than I was giving you credit for.
Well, I remember I was in the first grade, and I remember everybody was getting sent home that day. And I remember my teacher, Miss Peterson, she was tearing up and everything, and I didn't understand what was going on. And
Yeah.
it was just like I remember 9/11 that day, but then I do remember going to Fort Lee, Virginia afterwards and getting to see everything that you do and whatnot. But then you ended up going to Kuwait for a period of time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually at first they wanted me to go to Afghanistan. And just between me and you, well, I mean it's no big deal now, but
Yeah.
I didn't think I should go down there. At the time, see, 9/11 was 01, 43, so I was 43, 57. See, I was 58 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in good shape. I mean,
Yeah.
I was running 3 miles 3-4 times a week,
Yeah.
doing push-ups and set-ups and all that.
Mhm.
But still, when you go down and get into the battle, when you went into Afghanistan, you were in the battle zone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you didn't go down there unless you knew that you had a chance of somebody shooting at you. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you they prepared you for all that too. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you carried your weapon, your sidearm. I carried a pistol, 9mm.
Yeah.
And they gave you all kind of shots. I got like 30 or 40 shots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, medically trying to make sure. By the way, I was the healthiest dude for about 3 or 4 years after that. I never got sick.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had the opportunity to go to Afghanistan, and for some reason, they backed out of that and sent me to Kuwait.
Yeah.
And I was glad because I didn't want to risk anybody else's life, because if I got into a situation physically I couldn't handle it, you know.
Right.
And I thought I was okay, but I didn't have a solid confidence in my health at that
Right.
point. So
Yeah.
anyway, it worked out fine.
Yeah.
And when I was in Kuwait, we went over there to solve some problems in the logistics business.
Mm-hmm.
And my boss had enough confidence in me that I headed up a group of people, and we went over there and met with a 3-star general. I can't remember his name. He's Third Army commander.
Mm-hmm.
Third Army is called Patton's Own.
Yeah.
He was the Third Army commander during World War II, and it's always been a famous organization. So,
Yeah.
the problem was that when that war started, we sent a lot of folks to Afghanistan. They were all special ops people.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a whole lot of units like the 101st or the 82nd or
Mm-hmm.
10th Mountain or anything like that. They were special ops,
Mm-hmm.
SEALs, Rangers, and Delta Force, people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And these people, they operate like in a clandestine type of low key, out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But when they want something, they get it.
Yeah.
And they were doing things that was costing a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
and not getting the approval that was necessary in the military.
Yeah.
You know, if you want weapons or ammunition, just put in your request and you'll get it.
Right.
But the special ops community didn't want to wait.
Right.
And so when I met with this guy, he was telling me that he said, we've got to have an organization to control this because we're not built. Third Army did not have the team,
Mm-hmm.
organization to support the logistics that was required in that theater at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'll give you an example. He said, you know what a switchblade is? I said, yeah. And he said, well, the special ops people ordered 1,000 switchblades. I said, really? And I kind of giggle at this now because
Yeah.
it did happen though. And I looked at him, well, aren't switchblades illegal?
Yeah.
And he smirked and giggled a little bit. He said, yeah, they are in the States, but they're not illegal over here in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
He said they would give them to those chiefs of the tribes
Okay.
that they were supporting, and they would influence those people by giving these $150
Yeah.
switchblades. Well, 1,000 $150 switchblades cost $150,000.
Right.
He said, I had another example. He said where they were wearing these gargoyle sunglasses.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw in a Time magazine that some of these special ops guys were riding horses and/or mules, and they had these wraparound sunglasses on. They're special design.
Yeah.
And he said they ordered 1,000 of them, and were giving them away to the chiefs and to the influencers of that part of the world.
Yeah.
He said, well, guess how much they cost? And I said, I don't know, $40, $50. He said, $150. He said, 150 times 1,000 is another 150. He said,
Yeah.
150 plus 150. He said, they spent $300,000 and nobody authorized it. And
Yeah.
that's just a tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I see, I understand. You got to have somebody in here to run this thing, to
Right.
keep these people from breaking the United States. He
Right.
said, yeah. So it was an interesting
Yeah.
interesting thing that I did. And again, you know, you were right there.
Yeah.
Kuwait was a jumping off point.
Yeah.
And you were mixing and mingling with all kind of people who were involved in the war.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a big time deal. I really, really enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
quality people.
Yeah.
I'd start running in, we ran 2 or 3 times while we were there.
Yeah.
Well, actually 2 or 3 times a week while we were there. And I'd run alongside this 19, 20-year-old
Yeah.
Spec 4, you know, and he didn't know who I was. I didn't have my rank on, and I didn't
Right.
know who he was. And we started chatting and talking, and we had a good time. I
Yeah.
mean, I really have a lot of respect for the military because they're so
Yeah.
dedicated to what they're doing.
Yeah.
So,
So you ended up retiring in 2002.
yep,
April.
April 2nd, 2002.
What did life start to look like after the military?
Well, it wasn't, again, it kind of reminds me of me telling you about the high school. Everything was, I had a place and I had a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's gone.
Yeah.
I was a high speed guy, and then all of a sudden, bam.
Yeah.
So I floundered personally, although our business was still.
Yeah.
But I the business has always been Chris's because he's so much better at that. I'm an agronomist, but
Yeah.
he is the specialist when it comes to computers and precision ag type equipment.
Yeah.
And I never did really understand how all that worked. Although
Yeah.
I understand how it works, but I'm not a good technical guy
Yeah.
like he is.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was kind of a third wheel, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't really feel like I was making big contributions, and so I floundered along there for a while. And
Yeah. Do you feel like you had to kind of repurpose yourself
I
after
did.
everything?
Yeah, yeah, and I did. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I did, and it fell. What happened is my brother's working for DuPont, and they needed somebody to work on an insecticide project in the Delta, Mississippi Delta,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were trying to get special projects.
Mm-hmm.
The company, PMC, Precision Management Consulting, we were trying to get special projects so as to offset the our revenue.
Yeah.
And so I picked up that project, and I did all of that stuff working for the big companies. We worked for Monsanto, worked for Bayer, worked for DuPont. Well, DuPont kept coming back, and
Mm-hmm.
they finally came to me and said, "We've got an insecticide we're trying to introduce in the tobacco world." And I had worked in tobacco. I had raised tobacco when I was growing, when I was married.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember what year it was. Probably in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
I farmed probably 300 acres at one time. Had about 25 acres of tobacco.
Yeah.
And I knew quite a bit about tobacco.
Yeah.
And so they said, "Would you be interested in helping us with this?" So we sat down and talked, and one thing led to another. So they put me on salary. I was a consultant. I was not a DuPont employee, but I was a consultant working
Yeah.
for DuPont.
Okay.
And one thing led to another, and you know, Drew, it's just been that way ever since.
Yeah.
I've been doing something for somebody.
Yeah.
Since about, oh my, probably 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And it's 18, probably 10 or 11 years now.
Yeah.
And of course now I'm still consulting for FMC, which
Mhm.
DuPont sold out to Dow, and they sold a lot of products to FMC, and those products were the ones I was working on. So FMC called me and wanted me to work for a while, and I'm still doing that right
Yeah.
now.
So you've gotten to observe the world in a way that most people haven't had the privilege to. You've been all over the world. You've been to Vietnam, you've been to Kuwait, you've probably been to a handful of other places as well.
Egypt, yeah.
Egypt. For somebody, you know, at your age, with the careers that you've had, with the work that you've done, looking at the world now and seeing how it's changed, I don't know what the right question is to ask, but I guess, like someone my age asking somebody your age, do you feel like the world is crazier than it's ever been, or is in a different place than it's ever been before, or do you feel like this isn't anything new as far as what you grew up with? Because there's a lot of specific examples that I could throw out, like just recently, obviously the Pittsburgh synagogue deal just happened, and of course we were just talking about 9/11, and these are a lot of crazy events that are happening. Do you think it's getting more out of control, or do you think this is something that we've been dealing with since the beginning of time?
To a large degree, I think it's things that we've been dealing with since the beginning of time. What's different nowadays is the ability to know about something within seconds or minutes after it happens halfway across the world.
Yeah.
I mean, with the communication skills, devices that we all have now. Well, do you just think about it?
Yeah.
In 1500, 1600, well, let's 17, 1800s, back when 1700s, late 1600s, when America was founded, and, something could happen in Massachusetts and, Georgia or Tennessee or Kentucky wouldn't know about it for days, weeks, maybe months. They never would know about it.
Yeah.
And that's not the way life is now. So we know about everything that's going on worldwide.
Do you think that has an effect on the world as far as people changing?
I can't answer that. I wonder about it myself. Our ability to handle data has got to be limited.
Yeah.
I don't care how smart you are, how dumb you are. There's just so much that you can handle.
Yeah.
And like everything else in life, when you get an overload, if you have an overload, and at some point you're not doing as good a job as you would be if you didn't have an overload.
Yeah.
And I really, even kids nowadays, you're not a kid anymore. You're 24.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about these young people, 13, 14 years old, that have got iPhones and all these devices that allow them to connect to lots of different issues and things that are going on in the world, and it just seems like the world is spinning so much faster. And I've always been I'm one that I want information, I want data, and then I'll sort it out.
Yeah.
But I feel like that at some point, we can have overloads here.
Yeah.
And it does seem to me like we're kind of there.
Yeah.
We're kind of there. And that being said, so much of this data, so much of this information that's out there is now driven to money
mm-hmm.
and stock markets.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these companies are not going to stop doing what they're doing
mm-hmm.
because they're affecting the life of a person.
Yeah.
It just won't happen. Something else has got to change so that we can get back to a certain amount of data and information that anybody can understand. But I don't need to know everything that's going on in Mongolia, or the Philippines, or South America. I just don't need to know it.
Yeah.
But if you'll think about it, the big stuff, it's on the newspaper, it's on CNN, it's on Fox News, it's on whatever media device you're using. You can find out about just about anything. In fact, you can Google it, can't you?
Yeah.
And it'll tell you right off what happened.
Yeah.
Not necessarily is it the truth, but it is a version of what they think is the truth at that time. So my concern would be the speed at which we're all making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, the more information you have, the more accurate information you have about something, the better decision you should be making.
Yeah.
And I guess that's still true, but I do worry about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a stress on life.
Yeah.
For all, I can see it just in our family.
Yeah.
Okay, when Betsy and I got married, it was just two of us.
Right.
Then Michelle and Chris and Kathy came along. There's 5 of us I got to manage.
Yeah.
Now I got 12 grandchildren
Mm-hmm.
and a great grand. So
Mhm.
now we got 18 different people that I got to, I call it manage, and it's not managing, but I like to know what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on in Finn's life.
Yeah.
But I can't do all that.
Yeah.
Not as good as when I manage just me or Betsy,
Mm-hmm.
or when I manage me and Betsy and my 3 children.
Right.
That's the example. The
Yeah.
more data that you have sometimes complicates things.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm gonna give you some rapid fire questions here, and then we'll wrap it up. But thank you so much for being on this podcast. I really do appreciate it.
I've been looking forward
Yeah.
to it.
I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah. It's
But,
I'm interested to see what kind of rapid. See, you didn't tell me about that, so.
well, I mean, it's not. You don't have to answer them quickly. It's just I have like a series of questions
Oh.
I always ask at the end of the podcast. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
You know, the Army's got a lot of people, not just people in the Army, but keep your head down and don't volunteer for a thing. So, what does that mean in the military? It's pretty obvious. You know, if
Yeah.
somebody's shooting at you, you keep down, you secure yourself, you watch out for yourself.
Yeah.
You do what's necessary to avoid detection or
Right.
bullets or whatever. And then don't volunteer for a thing. Volunteering for a thing is, in my mind, is if you're going to do something, be ready for it.
Right.
And when you volunteer, sometimes you're not always ready.
You might bite off more than you can
might
chew.
bite off more than you can chew. So,
Yeah.
In my mind, keep your head down means always be ready.
Yeah.
And you know me pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that I carry a pistol.
Yeah.
I try to be ready for
Yeah.
things that are going to occur.
Right.
And most of the time, they never occur.
Yeah.
And as far as volunteering, I try to be ready so
Mhm.
that when I volunteer, I don't have to regret it.
Right.
I mean, when I raise my hand and say, listen, I'd like to do that, and
Mhm.
I normally know what I'm doing,
Mhm.
and I feel like that I can make a contribution. Make a contribution. So,
Yeah.
advice is, even though it's simple, keep your head down and don't volunteer. Just always be ready for life. Try to anticipate what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
The military's real good at that too.
Mm-hmm.
The military anticipates what's going to happen. And it's not just, they don't do the good things. What happens if plan B here and we're overrun and we have to fall back? Where do we fall back to?
Yeah.
Where does the commander take his operations guys?
Yeah.
What happens to the machine guns? What happens to the bazookas?
Yeah.
Whatever weapons we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
So knowing what you're doing and being ready for it is probably the best advice that I've ever had, and I got that from a lot of people. I think I told you about that guy I worked for in Iron Worker.
Yeah.
He was an old stodgy kind of a guy. And,
Mm-hmm.
he would tell me, he said, avoid structural steel. He said it's real dangerous.
Yeah.
And I would listen to him.
Yeah.
And then don't do anything that you don't feel like you're capable of doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait until you're capable. Wait until you're knowledgeable. Wait until you're skilled. Whatever. So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
What is your favorite book?
Wow.
You can have top 3. You can name 3 if you. Because I know how much you love books and
Yeah.
everything.
David Halberstram is probably my favorite author.
Yeah.
And The Best and the Brightest is one of his books, and The Coldest Winter. Any book about the Korean War,
Yeah.
just absolutely humbles me.
Yeah.
Because those guys went over there in the dead of winter wearing summer uniforms
Yeah.
that the Army, that the United States should have done a better job, should have prepared them, should have given them winter clothing.
Yeah.
30 degrees below zero, and you got short sleeve shirts on. It was a terrible war.
Yeah.
We were lucky to win that one,
Mhm.
only because America is so good and so responsive.
Yeah.
That we were able to hold them off, and we went down into the area of Pusan, and we made a stand
Yeah.
there. And there was a guy by the name of Walker that just said, "They're not coming. We're going to die here."
Yeah.
So all of you get ready. You're either going to fight or you're going to die, because we're not leaving. And guess what?
Yeah.
You know, they held their own, and then reinforcements kept coming on, and we were okay. So the books, I like David Halberstam a lot. Best and the Brightest. I thought that's a good book that's about Kennedy back when he was president, and he supposedly, had the best cabinet, the best people in the world. Of course, we know that wasn't always the case.
Yeah.
Even back then.
Yeah.
The Coldest War is probably the best book.
Okay.
Although I like lots of military books. I like anything about Gettysburg. I like anything about the Civil War.
Mhm.
I've read Grant's biography, and it's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He was dying when he wrote that book. He had cancer of the throat.
Oh.
And they used to coat his throat with iodine.
Wow.
Iodine stings.
Yeah.
And then he would talk.
Yeah.
To a stenographer, and everything he said was taken down, and he stood up to that for a long time, months.
Yeah.
He finally died. But if you want a book about the Civil War, just read U.S. Grant's biography about it. It's amazing. So that's a good book too.
Okay. What is your favorite movie?
Hunt for Red October.
The Hunt for Red October? Okay. Why is that?
Well, I just think it just shows what American might and will, and
Mhm.
how good we really are.
Yeah.
I mean, we're very, very fortunate to have a country we've got all kind of steel and minerals and lots of things to support our lifestyles,
Mhm.
and we do good things with that.
Yeah.
I mean, we build submarines and airplanes and skyscrapers. And I think that Hunt for Red October was just one of those movies that came along at the right time.
Yeah.
And kind of showed how good America really was.
Yeah.
Not only were they capable, but they were just good people.
Yeah. If you could travel anywhere in the world that you haven't been to yet, where would you go?
Probably Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've always had a great respect for the German people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they was on the wrong side twice, but
Yeah.
you see where they are today. I mean, their economy is holding Europe together right now, and they're really, if you look in German communities in America, they're all neat people. They take care of their stuff. They work hard.
Mm-hmm.
They do the things right.
Yeah.
I like German. I like Britain. I like England.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy and I want to go to Switzerland maybe someday to see where Mr. Sprunger's family was from.
Isn't there a
There's a town.
town called Sprunger, Switzerland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure is. Yeah. I don't know that. I kind of like America now. I don't like to fly that much because it's just too difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gettysburg
Gettysburg still is a real good place for me to go. I could spend days or weeks there.
I remember going on those trips with you. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it again one of these days too.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you could give a piece of advice to the audience, or if you could say anything to the audience, what advice would you give?
Well, I think you need to do the right thing, and boy, sometimes the right thing gets cloudy. You don't know. That's when you got to rely upon your training, your upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll just slow down long enough, uh, most of us know what the right thing is.
Yeah.
But the problem is that we are faced with so many things that are gray. It's not black and white.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes to decide what's right and what's wrong. But I think if you would just slow down and try to always do the right thing. And that, when I say slow down, I mean sometimes I can remember I was on a patrol in ROTC, and we were at a camp, and we were out at 2 o'clock at night, and we were shooting blanks, of course. But blanks, if you shoot them right next to a guy's ear,
Mm-hmm.
and I was patrol leader,
Yeah.
and we got into an ambush, and everybody was shooting, and it was nobody could see, and I said, "Halt, halt, cease fire, cease fire." And the active duty soldier came up to me and said, "What in the world are you doing?" I said, "These people were a danger, and I didn't want anybody to get hurt." He said, "Good call."
Yeah.
Because he wanted to make sure I knew why I did what I did,
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to do that because I didn't know whether I was doing the right thing or not. But I said, somebody's going to get hurt here.
Yeah.
And I was in charge. See,
Yeah.
I was the guy that's supposed to have said, "Stop."
Yeah.
So cease fire. And that night, we'll forget that. The guy came up to me and kind of gruffly said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, man, I'm going to get my butt chewed here." I said, "Man, this was a dangerous situation. Somebody's going to get their ears blown out."
Yeah.
He said, "Good call," walked off.
Cool.
So try to do the right thing.
Yeah.
If you'll try, most of the time, you'll be good.
Cool. Well, Pawpaw, thank you for being on this podcast. I really do appreciate it.
Drew, I loved every minute of it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I will see you next time. Thank you.